Yeah, you're just saying, yeah.
Right, well, morning everyone. No, thank you very much for joining today's session. I just see that there will be obviously some people just joining us at the moment. And you'll see that there's a reminder there from several people about trying to make sure that you switch off your cameras and microphones. That just protects the bandwidth and makes it easier for us to present to you this morning. So this morning's session is going to be covering, bringing meta skills to the classroom, and myself and a number of others will be talking to you about this morning, and really keen to obviously get your feedback and thoughts on this, and I'll obviously show you in a second. Go through some of the housekeeping with you. So my name is Tom Harley. On the call we also have Joan Mackay, and my colleague Elizabeth Dunbell will also be presenting over the course of the next 45 minutes. So a few housekeeping issues just as we begin. Can I just remind everybody to turn off your microphones and cameras? This prevents any background noise interference and just makes it a lot easier to navigate through the session. Can you please be present in the learning space? We want to encourage as much activity and participation as possible. I would obviously encourage you to use the chat pane to ask any questions or comments, and post any links or resources. I myself will actually be using the chat pane as well to share some links to resources that I'm going to get you to use throughout the session. So if you can have that chat pane open, it'll make it a little bit easier. If you do have any technical issues, you can share these with the Speakeasy support chat function tool, which is on the portal. If you lose connection, this is an open connection. You don't need to be admitted. You're not in a lobby, so you should just be able to click the link and come back in. If you'd like to tweet, use the hashtag SLF online, and hopefully you enjoy the session. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just switch off my camera, because sometimes I do feel that interrupts my bandwidth. So you'll not see me in the little corner, but certainly you'll still hopefully hear me. So a quick overview of the session before we hand over to Joan is Joan is going to look at the drivers behind the need to embed skills more effectively across education. I will then look at the STS Meta Skills Toolkit that was just launched today and take you through some of the resources that are available. We've then got a small little activity to get you involved in this morning to try and illustrate, how one of the resources can be used. My colleague Elizabeth will then explain to you how her and a few other colleagues, in partnership with practitioners from all over Scotland, have started to look at developing a meta skills progression framework. We'll then give you a little bit of a taste as to what's coming next in the Meta Skills Toolkit before that opportunity for anybody to ask questions. And just along the bottom, you will see there the 12 meta skills that are part of the Skills 4.0 model. So I would really just like to encourage you to obviously use your focusing and attention. Obviously use your communicating meta skill. So be open to receiving information, listening and giving information, and explore your curiosity. So if you do have questions about anything, obviously feel really free to share these within the chat pane. So I would now like to hand over to Joan Mackay. Joan is the Head of Curriculum Innovation for Education Scotland, and she's going to take us through the drivers behind the need to embed skills more effectively across education.
Thanks, Tom, and good morning, colleagues. I'm going to resist the urge to wave at some of the faces I recognise and some of the names I recognise from all the participants, but a really warm welcome to everybody this morning. Hope all is well. So I want to just bring you back a little bit of a kind of backward look to a world before COVID. And in September 2019, we, and by that I mean collectively, the Curriculum and Assessment Board, representative of many organisations who are in this session today, published the refreshed narrative for Scotland's curriculum. Now, the one thing I would say to you is please take 10 minutes after this just to go back into that if you haven't been in it recently. The easiest way to get to it at the moment, because it sits on a microsite, is to just type refresh narrative into your Google search engine. So it's really worth looking at that again, because at that stage, obviously, there was a lot of debate about what people were asking for, what people wanted in this refresh, this reminder of what Scotland's curriculum was about. And a new section was put in which hadn't been there before. There always had been the why, the 4 capacities. There always had been the what, which is what the curriculum covers. In other words, it covers subject areas, it covers curriculum areas, it covers interdisciplinary learning and the ethos and life of the school and personal achievements. But we hadn't actually ever pulled together anything on the how. And as you know from recent reports, including the OECD one, Scotland has struggled with implementation at different points and for different areas. So recommend that you go into that microsite and in particular, look at the section on how, where we put in one of very few links at that point, and the link was to the meta skills. It's really worth looking at that particular link today in the light of what you're about to hear, because that was a very first iteration in 2019 of the paper that justified, it gave you the drivers for why we needed Skills 4.0. And it's really worth looking at that paper just now, because we'll eventually, I suppose, replace that paper with what you're going to hear today from Tom and the team, the update of the work that's gone on since then. But just to read it, underneath this, knowing the big ideas, it obviously has big statements about the need to know. Could microphones off, please? The need to know about knowledge and the need to know about vision and the drivers. It says this particular statement, maximise the opportunities to develop the 4 capacities for learners, making clear links to future skills, for example, the meta skills. Now, it's really worth looking at that paper, as I say, to remind yourself, and you see the justification for why we ended up having to bring meta skills so much to the fore in the refresh narrative going forward. So I did laugh this morning when I read it myself again, but here we go. And I want to share this with you, given what we've all been through. So remember, September 2019, this was published. We'd hardly got going on the work, and you know what happened in February, March of 2020. And there was this little line here which said, we anticipate that. This is in the report, the initial report, and it gives a whole lot of pointers to what they anticipate might come. But this is the one that I made me smile this morning. We anticipate that technology will continue to provide new ways of connecting and collaborating globally, making it easier to operate again across wider and different organisations. And what are we doing now? What are we doing naturally right now? So that was a kind of future prediction, and that future prediction, of course, is with us now. So I do recommend that you look at that. And again, bearing in mind the time and the time I have today, is to be really clear that what it's helping us to do is to make sense of the 4 capacities. And again, that came out in the OECD report. First of all, commending Scotland for having the capacity, setting out the why in that way, but also pointing out that we have over-focused on one of these and not looked at all 4 in their totality. So recommend that you do that. And just to finish this, if it helps, it's really worth looking at the 3 groupings of the meta skills, which Tom laid in part there, and you're about to hear more about. But self-management, social intelligence and innovation, it's really worth taking time yourself in a moment of reflection to just gauge where you are as a human being, as a parent, as a teacher, as a practitioner, whatever it is you do, it's really worth looking at that for yourself in the first place and spending time doing that. And equally, just mischievously, if you dare, it's really worth doing with your family. So if you have a time this weekend, have a reflection, see where you all sit in relation to all of these skills in the Meta Skills Framework. That's all I want to say just now, because I'm again conscious of time, but do recommend that you tap in, and I see Elizabeth has put in the links into the chat pane, so that should be an easy way of finding your way around. Now, Elizabeth, just saying to you and to Tom, one of our action points after today is to make sure that the link to the new work, which is about to be shared, is put up on the refresh narrative under that heading, Know the Big Ideas. Okay, thank you. Tom, do you want to pick up now?
No, thank you very much, Joan. A really, thoughtful insight into how the kind of meta skills can align to the refresh narrative and the drivers behind that. You've actually got an additional 4 minutes, so I don't know if you want to fill these, but you've finished 4 minutes ahead of schedule, so more than happy we can roll on if you want, if there's nothing else that you'd like to share. You may be on mute. So
yeah, that's fine for just now. I think we just, yeah.
Great. Okay. So as I say, no, thank you very much for that input, Joan. I suppose what we're moving towards now is a launch for the kind of skills toolkit. So as I said, my name's Tom Halley. I'm one of the education managers at Skills Development Scotland, but we've actually, myself and a large number of the team have been working on this for over the course of the year. I'll just share with you now so that if you want to, this is the link to the new toolkit that went live just earlier on today. So I think it's useful to actually set the scene as to how meta skills, where meta skills sit in amongst all the other skills. So I think when we talk about skills, we think about what skills, what do we mean, why this language of meta skills. So when we start to think about meta skills, these meta skills are the skills that humans are born with, and they actually follow under the three, well, in our model, they fall under the three headings of self-management, social intelligence, and innovation. And we have created a kind of model that looks at 12 meta skills. And we would say that these skills underpin and relate to the learned transferable skills and the learned technical skills. So that the meta skills permeate through you build up the kind of using one or more meta skills to actually be able to pick up these transferable skills and technical skills and then apply them in context. And when we talk about the transferable skills, we're talking about literacy, numeracy, and digital literacy, and these learned technical skills, subject courses, ones that you maybe pick up in subjects or courses, jogs, occupations, and leisure interests, and the career management skills. So I think this graphic tries to hone in on how meta skills align to all the other skills frameworks that are there. And I appreciate, many schools or organisations may have developed their own skills framework that actually may draw upon different areas, and I think that's fine. But our toolkit has honed in on and centred on the meta skills. When we've actually been thinking about the process of bringing skills and keeping them in focus throughout the course of an academic year, we actually see it as a cyclical process. We see that there's a need to have a kind of start of year conversation, an actual bit of a reference brought to skills to try and give a bit more of a focus, to get young people to then do a bit of a self-evaluation. Think about, what meta skills they possess, which they'll possess all of them, but what ones do they actually maybe feel are stronger than others? Which ones do they need, to develop over the course of a year, and actually record that as a bit of a kind of action plan. Then throughout day-to-day learning and teaching, as part of that natural, lesson, skills will be brought into focus. So they'll be made visible, there'll be opportunities for learners to engage in discussion and actually then record these skills that they're using. There's going to be a bit of a reflection at mid-year. So actually reflecting on, over the past 6 months, how have I developed these skills that I set out, the ones that I said that I would focus on, and actually what am I now going to focus on for the next 6 months? Is there anything that I need to do more of? Again, day-to-day learning and teaching, making sure that these skills are visible, and then an end-of-year review to take stock over the past year. How have my skills developed over the course of this year, and what am I going to take forward into next year? And we see that as a cyclical process all the way through education, from early years through to senior phase and beyond. So hopefully, setting that context of the kind of premise behind how meta skills sit in relation to other skills, what the process that we're kind of trying to take forward. This is the Meta Skills Toolkit Phase 1 that we've developed. I think one of the things that we have to iterate is that this is not a mandatory toolkit, so we're not telling everybody that they need to use this toolkit. And I think, from our perspective, we actually were starting to see in the system lots and lots of practitioners, schools, organisations being drawn to the meta skills as a kind of skills framework that they could relate to, and they were starting to develop their own resources. And I think we felt that, you know, it was our position to start collating some of that work, pulling it all together and creating a bit of a kind of toolkit of guidance that other schools, other, you know, practitioners, organisations that are maybe coming to this for the first time, rather than reinventing the wheel, they actually have something that they can go by. Or start off with, sorry. So it has been developed in consultation with educators and other partners, and these resources are to provide guidance and support to try and make the embedding of meta skills in a manageable and sustainable way across learning and teaching. Within the toolkit, there are a number of resources. Some of the tiles have actually got no resources, and they're coming in phase 2. I think despite best efforts, there's a few things that have just been snagged up, but we will be releasing resources over the course of the next year. But we've started off, we have a guidance paper, so that really hones in on linking how meta skills align to the national drivers, whether they be educational drivers or other drivers, in regards to, you know, Scotland's Future Skills Action Plan, and hone in on why we've actually used the meta skills. We have adaptable faculty posters, so I think it's really, really important to get the discussion taking place at school level and actually gain or build an understanding amongst practitioners and learners on, you know, what these meta skills look like in different contexts. So these posters have been developed. Again, it was a school that had started using these elsewhere, and we've, you know, taken their idea and changed it and adapted it to be able to share this with everybody. But thinking about, you know, self-management in, would it be the computing department or, you know, primary 5, and actually trying to think about really, really clear illustrative examples of what that meta skill might look like. So what does focusing look like in computing or primary 5? What does feeling look like? So the first part is getting that conversation taking place between the practitioners to agree on a statement as to what goes in there. And then the next part is then sharing that, whether that be on corridors or on classroom walls, so that learners can actually read these illustrative examples and actually start to be able to connect how they use a skill in a particular area with another area. We also have a lesson starter and finisher. So these are editable PowerPoint templates. I appreciate that many of you will probably use these resources already in part of your learning and teaching. But we brought that to everybody, so hopefully they can take a bit of ignition, a bit of innovation from it. So sharing the learning intention success criteria, what skills will be developed during a lesson, just like you probably see I used the lesson insert at the start of this session, and we'll use the lesson finisher at the end. So these are here to try and encourage you to use these and bring that language to the learning environment. My colleague Elizabeth will actually go into more detail about the Meta Skills Progression Framework. This is a piece of work that we've been doing in partnership with Education Scotland and a number of other practitioners across Scotland to try and bring a bit more of a kind of feeling on what do these skills look like across levels from early years to senior phase. But I'll let Elizabeth share that with you. We have a suite of posters. So we have an overarching meta skills poster that obviously has them all together, but we also have a suite of individual meta skills posters. So these posters, again, have been developed looking at the narrative within the Skills 4.0 paper. And they are available. You'll get them within the kind of toolkit link. I think they're under other resources. So hopefully, you'll be able to use these, put them on your walls, and use them for different scenarios. One of which we'll go into in a second. But I think we appreciate that one of the things that has been mentioned is that this language is maybe being steered towards a secondary narrative, which I think is rightly so. I think we've obviously started off that way. But going forward, when we actually start to take the toolkit into different phases, we'll look to try and actually adjust that narrative. So trying to maybe create a primary suite, an early years suite, and obviously a kind of college FE and employer suite. So, but just keeping that language, visible and giving the learners an opportunity to read and think and provoke what does that actually skill look like in me? So just one way of trying to exemplify how that can be used, and this is the power of online technology. Hopefully this will work. I'm not too sure how 132 people will access it, but we're going to give it a go. So these skills posters, as I said, they will be used in a classroom environment. It could be that they're placed on a wall, and at the beginning of a lesson you might ask young people, you might hand them out sticky notes and get them to think about the skills that they're going to use in this lesson, and put a sticky note against the skills that they might use. It might be at the end of a lesson, you get them to reflect on, right, what skills did I use this lesson? And then put the sticky note on, and then as a practitioner you can wander around and take the sticky notes off and engage in discussion. So there's different ways that these can be used, but to try and replicate that, and this is, as I say, hopefully this will work, I have put together a Google Jamboard. So I'm just going to quickly jump out of my presentation at the moment. And if we go to Jamboard, so hopefully I've shared that link with you all. For those of you that are new to Jamboard and have maybe not seen it before, it is like an MS Teams whiteboard. It's a collaborating space that many people can delve into. I have been told that potentially it could get a bit glitchy if too many people try to access it. However, this will be it will be available beyond today's session. It is a live Jamboard. It's not going to be closed down until I decide to close it down. So for those of you, if you can't get in right now, want to delve into it at a different time, more than happy for you to do that. On the left-hand side, you should see a number of tools. And on these tools, down in the middle, you'll see that there's one that's got a sticky note on it. So that will allow you to obviously then type in an example of something that you may have done over the weekend where you've actually used a particular meta skill. So it could be that you had a barbecue or you cooked food. So I'll leave you to think about the narrative. Then scrolling along the top, you'll see that there are 3 pages. It can, yeah, okay, thank you. Somebody's just said their message came up to say too many people using the Jamboard, as was expected. So apologies for those of you that can't get in. So yeah, along the top, there are 3 pages. If you inadvertently click too far, it will create an additional page, but not to worry if we just try to keep to the 3 pages that are there. And it'd be quite nice for those of you that have been able to get into the Jamboard, if you could add some sticky notes with an example of something that you've done over the weekend, and then attach that to one of the skills that actually you used to carry out that activity. So hopefully, just as people are being able to do that, I exercised control at a wedding reception on Saturday by not consuming too much alcohol, and that's been put against integrity. Well, thank you very much for sharing that. As an anonymous Jamboard, we can't obviously find out who that is, but within a classroom environment, obviously, you'll be able to know the learners that are putting these post-it notes up. But one of the other ways potentially this activity can be done, and it leads to a kind of another resource that we're hopefully looking to develop, is actually getting young people to look at the posters around them, and they could potentially do a little bit of a mind map where they write in the middle of the page the particular item or activity that they were involved in, and then looking around, they can actually tease out all the skills and build a picture of what actual skills they use during that activity. So hopefully, these poster resources can be used in different ways to try and bring that discussion, that opportunity for reflection, to the classroom. I'm really keen to gave up a shopping trip. I must say though that so it's okay. Hopefully, when you're actually adding a sticky note, you have to be on the right page that you want to add the sticky note. So you can't add the sticky note and then go to a different page to add it. But I appreciate many of you have probably used this before. Worked with a team of volunteers, collaborating, fantastic. Spoke with a friend about his feelings about his brother and sense of guilt. Yeah, really opening up conversations. Team in my cluster. So, as I say, this was only just one example of how this could be done potentially, and hopefully, touch wood, we don't move back into an online, hybrid learning where we're teaching learners at home. But potentially, if we do, this is something that you could actually do with your learners, and potentially to try and take away the anonymity Yeah, to know who it is that's actually putting them on, you could get them to put their name first of all, and then the little hyphen, and then the comment, so that you can actually get track of it. So I'll leave that running. More than happy. Can you access from a personal device? Yep. So the Jamboard is open to all, so that is a public link. So anybody with that link will be able to access. I see there that it's blocked on some council devices. So yeah, that's unfortunate. But hopefully, if you get a chance to do it, maybe on a home device or something, that would be good. Right. So I'll go back to my presentation very quickly. So, trying to think about, the benefits. I've already alluded to some of the benefits of this activity. So you're getting that opportunity to have increased visibility of the meta skills within your learning and teaching. There's an opportunity for you to engage in discussion and reflection with your learners. So to try and do that more higher order thinking and think about why did they pick out those particular activities. Recognition that several meta skills can be developed during one activity. And then, it consolidates that understanding. It starts to do some connecting for learners about how particular meta skills can line up. So we would say that, although they are housed under 3 headings, they still, interlink within each other. Now, that's the kind of the phase 1. As I say, the phase 1 is launched. It's on our website, which has been shared. I'm now going to hand over. One of the things that I had alluded to there is within the toolkit is a progression framework, and my colleague Elizabeth Dumbell is going to give us a little bit of a kind of introduction to how we went about this piece of work and what we're actually looking to achieve.
Thanks, Tom. Hello, everybody. My name's Elizabeth Dumbell, and I work with Tom in Skills Development Scotland. And I'm just going to take a few minutes to take you through the process of how we came about developing the progression framework that we've got now. My colleague and I, Susan Rees, were tasked with this earlier on this year with developing a meta skills progression framework. And the reasoning behind this was really because it was obvious from the work that we were doing with schools that there was a need for a standard meta skills progression framework. And we were asked continually, have you got examples of what do these skills look like in the classroom? So what we wanted to do was to create a document that schools could refer to that could be used as a foundation for schools to create their own skills framework and to embed skills across the curriculum, across the school. So as I say, we were tasked with this at the beginning of this year, early on in this year, and we started that process then. So it was a little bit like, oh, where are we going to begin with this? What do we start with? So it was very obvious that we took the Skills 4.0 model of meta skills to create the framework around. So we used the 12 meta skills from the Skills 4.0 model under the 3 headings of self-management, social intelligence, and innovation. And we started looking at what was already out there. So we looked at examples from different schools across Scotland. We did lots and lots of desk research. We consulted with schools and other partners. And we even looked at progression frameworks such as the Northern Ireland progression framework for thinking and learning skills. So we brought together a huge amount of information and started sifting through it and began the development of our own meta skills progression framework. So what we've finished with is the 12 meta skills, and each meta skill, under each meta skill, taking in consideration the capabilities and the skills that sit underneath those meta skills, we've got an illustrative example of how meta skills will look for each level across from early years right through to senior phase. Now, we developed this. One of the things that we were asked to do in the early doors of this was to try and make sure that each skill sat on one page, because it was felt that it was really easy that way to look at it. Now, because we've got skills going across as I say, from early years right through to senior phase on one page. That makes it easier for people who are looking at this, teachers and practitioners. It makes the whole skills framework more flexible, because you can see the whole of the progress from early years right to senior phase. So once we've developed this under the 12 skills, we took this in at the beginning of September to our focus group. And the focus group consisted of teachers from primary school, secondary school, practitioners from local authorities, DYW groups, a whole range of partners. And we had a focus group. We had that focus group look at what we'd done. We then took that feedback and we reviewed the framework, and we started refining what we'd got. Now we've completed 3 meta skills so far fully. So one of the meta skills is up on the screen at the moment, and that's communicating. And you can see how this will look when the final document is created. There'll be a document with all 12 meta skills on, presented as you see on the screen there. That obviously makes it easier if you want to print it off. You can print off individual skills as you're going along. You can print off the whole thing if you want to, or you could just use it as an electronic version. When we started developing this, it was definitely developed as a resource for teachers. So the idea being that teachers will use this to widen their knowledge and deepen their knowledge about meta skills in any particular level. And as I say, the levels are all shown on one page, because that makes it more flexible, because obviously we know that individuals don't always sit in one particular level. It means that you can look across all levels, and making that more flexible for individual use. So at the moment we've got the 3 skills completed, and they will be, you can access those through the website. That the link has been put up in the chat function, and they're sitting on the Skills Toolkit at the moment. But we are continually developing and refining the other 9 skills, and they'll be, the whole thing will be there very soon. We will continue refining this framework as we've still got the people on the focus group who have agreed to work with us. So it will still be under development as we're going on. But that's what the progression framework looks like just now. Okay, thanks, Tom.
No, thank you very much, Elizabeth. Just a few comments coming through on the chat. Despite obviously best intentions and having a website launched this morning and doing testing, it appears that some of the links aren't allowing people to download these. So we will, at the end of this call, chase up with our digital team and just check what the issue is. So hopefully, if you do visit later on today, that technical issue will be resolved and you will be able to get access to these resources.
Can I just pick up there on one of the comments, Tom? From Trisha Goodbrand, it's just commenting that it's actually could be useful to use with the ASGs or the clusters, so from primary school to secondary school. And there's been a lot of comment actually already in the conference around the learner journey and how we need to work, primary school to secondary school to college more closely. So yes, that was one of the intentions behind this, that would make that easier to do.
Fantastic, great, and that resonates with the other comment there from Julie, that the meta skills feature within the graduate apprenticeships. I know that they also feature within foundation apprenticeships and are being built into modern apprenticeships. So that language of meta skills will go all the way through, which is great to see. Mindful of time and really keen to have opportunity for anybody to ask questions at the end. So, Elizabeth alluded to there, as well as I, that we've got some resources that are currently under development. So, we see this as an ongoing project. So we don't see it as, a one and done. And I think as people start to become more familiar with the MetaSkills language and actually start to use their own innovation, because there are resources in there that allow practitioners to be innovative, we would really encourage those to be shared back with us so that we can actually start to take some of those innovative approaches and actually design these and then be able to share them much wider for all practitioners to use. But some of the things that we've got currently under development is that the kind of progression framework, we're looking to actually get that suite of 12 progression frameworks over the kind of coming months put up onto the website so that everybody can use these with their learners. We're looking to develop learner tools. So we're actually looking at how, tools that can support learners reflect on their meta skills and then create a little bit of an activity, a bit of a development plan as to how they can then start to take forward that into the kind of over the next 6 months and put a bit of a focus to skills. We're going to develop a suite of lesson plans. So we're looking at, particular lesson plans associated to the self-evaluation tools, but also other lessons that potentially could be used by your learners. And again, this is where we're really, looking to have some of this shared back with us so that where we are seeing really good examples that we can actually share them more widely. And lesson inserts, so actually trying to bring meta skills to lessons for all practitioners and trying to think, is there little activities? So these could be bite-sized activities that take 5 to 10 minutes that practitioners can just drop into a lesson to try and bring a particular meta skill or group of meta skills into focus, or can it be a kind of talking head video? So we're looking to create videos that will be a mixture of practitioners, learners, employers, actually sharing their stories and how they have used particular meta skills. So just in summary, before we go to questions, so we have been, learning about, drivers behind the need to embed meta skills more effectively across education, and you've also been finding out about the resources within the SDS Meta Skills Toolkit. Obviously, this is our lesson finisher, so we would obviously ask people to think about what other skills you've developed during this lesson, but we're obviously not going to do that at the moment. Careers that use these skills, so the lesson finisher actually has hyperlinks, and these will take you off to the My World of Work website. So you will see the link within the toolkit, so you can actually add on some of the kind of job profiles that you think really relate to the learning, to try and bring that a bit more contextualized and joined upness to it. And that kind of there you can think about, can you think of any more careers that use these skills? So that was really just us wanting to share with you the lesson finisher and potentially how that could be used. I see that there are a few questions have been coming through on the chat function. Hopefully we've had an opportunity, to answer these as we go through. I would invite anybody, if you have any other questions, more than happy. Hopefully the hands up function is made accessible. So if anybody wants to put the hands up function to actually speak or ask a question, more than happy to do that. Alternatively, we know that you can ask these questions through the chat and we can pick these up. Just give people a second. Oh.
Tom, do you want me? Neil has put in something interesting there.
I'm just scrolling through them.
Yeah,
now.
yeah. He's not really asking a question, it's kind of a reflection, and that's a fair enough reflection, wondering how best to blend them. So, again, just a reflection back, Neil. The way the framework is set out for meta skills is really interesting because you can come at it from a whole series of levels. I mean, what you've heard today is taking it right down to the detail of lesson inserts, which is great, which is what a lot of people were asking for, but other people are using it in different ways. So if a school has already put a lot of work and investment into a skills framework, and some schools have, I think the thing to do probably is to look at the overarching meta skills, the 3 big headers, and see, does your school one, does it meet, how does it match up to all of that, or is there some imbalance in your school one? So just to use it almost initially as an evaluation tool, reflect back on the balance of your own skills, and then for me again linking back to the capacities. So you can tune in to the meta skills framework in a whole different levels.
Great. I'm just trying to go through. There are lots of obviously positive comments there, people really welcoming these resources, which is fantastic. Links to the graduate attributes, which is great. Right,
Any hands
fantastic.
up, folks? Any voices coming through?
I'm just seeing there's one there from Maxine, actually. Do you plan to create any parental resources? There is a section on My Kids Career that already makes reference to the meta skills. It's one of these things that, within the entirety of our meta skills toolkit, we actually look for the whole influencers or parties to be involved. So employers and parents will take a place in that as well. So we will potentially be looking at in subsequent phases, how we can actually develop resources for parents. And will they be linked to completing the MyWow profile? Long-term plans are yes. We would actually be hoping to ensure that the MyWow profiling tool is used or pushed for people to be using, for young people to capture, or learners to capture the skills that they're using. So, but at the moment there's just a few adjustments that are taking place on that.
So somebody's got their hands up.
Wendy Mackay. Oh, you may be on mute, Wendy.
Are you on mute, Wendy?
There, it should be working now. I pressed it and then it didn't go off. I have really enjoyed listening into this morning, so much so that I grabbed two colleagues as they were going past, but you've got to hear this, it's so good. We literally had this conversation yesterday in school, in two different classes, where we don't know what's happened, but we're finding that children don't have their initiative anymore. They're a bit helpless. And like we had one child come into the class and the first thing she just said was, what's the time? And I said, well, there's a clock up there. Have a look yourself and work it out. And then there was another, I can't remember what it was. And I'm thinking, this is exactly what we're talking about. It's the skills for life, learning, for work, these skills that they need to have internally to be successful. And by developing these skills, the curriculum comes alive for them so much better as well. I have really enjoyed this. Thank you so much. So it's not really a question. It was just to tell you how apt this is right now. This is just brilliant. Thank you so much.
No, well, thank you very much for sharing, Wendy. Certainly makes it all worthwhile when you get these positive comments. So no, thank you very much. I don't know if anybody else appreciate, we still have 2 minutes. I suppose, Joan, that's where you did have 5 minutes extra at the beginning that you could have filled and never used. So we would have been over if you had used all of that. So no, thank you for curtailing that. I suppose that the only thing that we would encourage, if anybody doesn't have any questions, is just to, thank you very much for being part of the session this morning, for making that early start. If any of you do want to get in touch with myself or any of the other education team, the email address is there, so it's education@sds.co.uk. So more than happy for you to get in touch to find out more. We will go away immediately as soon as this call finishes. I will be finding out or trying to take a little bit of a look into the technical issues as to why these documents aren't being able to download. Before we do that, apologies, Joanne, I've just seen, did you put your hand up there, Joanne Hadrick?
I did. Good morning.
Right.
I just wanted to ask whether there might be a development of this which would allow employers to be supported to use some of this in work experience. So I sit within NHS Education for Scotland and looking at our work experience within the NHS. So just that, perhaps a plea for future developments.
Right. So I know that there are resources that have been developed for the work-based learning, programmes. So whether these be foundation apprenticeships, modern apprenticeships, and graduate apprenticeships, and they do have resources available to actually get young people to reflect and capture the skills that they develop within their work experience and work placements. So it may be something that if you were, be able to contact us through the website, we could actually link you up to our colleagues within SDS that are leading on that piece of work to have that conversation.
Perfect, thanks for that. I'm quite new to this role, so just getting
to
grips with what's out there.
No silly questions here. So great, thank you. I think on that, with that last question, really pleased. Lots of positive comments coming through. We will endeavour to ensure that technical issue of downloading them is resolved as swiftly as possible. But at 8:45, hopefully you will enjoy the rest of your day, and really look forward to sharing more of these resources as we go out through the course of the year. Okay.
Thank you.